Do you believe that that's our calling? To make you feel my love. To help you feel my love. Is that not the one call of humanity, the one aspect of God consciousness that hands down you know is truth? That God is love. And we're here to feel that love. We're here to bring that love. We're here to be that love. Have you caught the news flash about social media? Have you caught it yet? That it's not real. Like, it's not a real place. It's a place that we go. We might turn over the phone when we wake up. We might pop on it from time to time, right, and check it out. But do you get it that it's not real? Some of you are starting to hear what I'm saying, I think. It's not real, as in it's not a real place and it's not a real indicator of what's going on. Who has not posted something that they wanted to share or celebrate with the world on a social media platform? Right? Now, who has not also, in the fullness of the human condition, at the same time, in the same day, maybe the same hour, maybe the same week, maybe the same month, been crushed to the ground or suffered with some turmoil or gone through some emotions or seen something awful or experienced something rattling that you did not post or you did not see on social media? Yes? No? If you don't see it in your own self, you may see it in others, right? We don't get on there, which is probably not a bad thing, but we don't get on there all the time and update and share. Has anyone had a relationship where you made the young choice to have a confidant to share with aspects of a relationship, and you shared all the woe is me? The trouble, like, help me through this. I've got to fix this relationship or whatever. Do you go back then and make all the updates? Do you go back and say, actually, we've worked this out now. It's going well, this and that? When we don't, we have someone that's holding, the last thing I know about you is this. And those thoughts, right? Thoughts are real things. Everything comes from a thought. So those thoughts can be impactful. And we don't do those updates. Social media is the same, right? It's like we can see one lens with one aspect, the part that we're willing to put out there to share, either so someone can see our good news, so someone can see our family, so someone can visualize, right? I know for myself, like, mine is filled with a lot of like fireflies at night and singing a little song or a post of a trip, right? But the gravity of things coming to me real time in my life that I have to process, that I have to work through, that I show up to is like a full body different experience, right? Amen? So if someone takes that and thinks there is the fullness of reality, what can you do to yourself with that? One, you can harm yourself, right? By thinking, oh, other people have something that I'm missing. So can we connect heart to heart, person to person? When's the last time you spent a whole day with a friend? When's the last time that you had an unlimited conversation, a conversation that you just said, here we are, go? How are you? When is the last time you picked up the phone and reached out to tell someone what's really going on in your life? And to say, here's what you need to know about what's going on with me. And I need support. Master teachers throughout time have taught us that we are the ones to have dominion over this physical world, over our reality. That we determine it, right? That we put forth the consciousness, the filter through which we co-create. And the mind is a powerful thing. So we're not here to be just blowing around with what the mind does. We're to call from spirit, to call from the center of our being, the source, God, love, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to name it, the practice, the way, the I am nature, the essential self, the higher self, the Christ, whatever you want to call it, we're here to call forth from that. And for that to be the space and the place in our life and in our consciousness that has dominion. But we don't always experience that in the human condition. Our calling, our role is wholeness, healing of self, family, community, nation, world. But we can often feel like we're a recipient of those things, even our own selves, right? Even our own thoughts and our own minds. It's just like, well, here they are. I am the recipient of this. So when is the last time that we took on a conscious, solid practice of checking in? Kind of like Bethany was saying this morning when she saw some things on social media and she said, that's not my community. That's not my reality. Are we drawing our reality from the outer, or are we drawing our reality from the inner? So no doubt there's a lot going on. We heard a song this morning with Joe and the band about God is so good all the time. And how do we demonstrate that? We have this theme about how do we engage the practice when the outside world seems a bit funky. Does it not seem a little funky to anyone else? Does anyone have any little concerns going on right now? At all? Concerns like, it could be about the world, it could be about the nation, it could be about our systems, it could be about the community, it could be about family, it could be about self, it could be about all of those things. The processes that people are going through right now are profound. Probably one of the reasons they're profound is because there's a little destabilization happening now, isn't there? Do you feel that? A little destabilization? And so we reflect inward, and our practice and unity is like, so what's going on with me? What is mine to do? How do I show up? So how do we show up for a world that feels like it's destabilized? For a family system that feels like it's destabilized? Or for a self that feels like it's destabilized? We all have our wounding. If you get close enough to people, you recognize that we're all perfect and we're all kind of messed up. If you get close enough. If you get back here and you do the social media lens, which is also just the lens of a life of non-intimacy, non-authenticity, right? You'll see a whole different picture. But if we allow ourselves to get close enough, we're present to different dynamics. Our history, where we come from, what's going on for us, what we're overcoming, what we're struggling with, the thoughts that we're having, our internal landscape. The prayer of St. Francis of Assisi is this: Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love. For it is in giving. Notice how I didn't say we're not deserving of all that stuff. We're now going to the access point of that stuff, that good God stuff. It is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. So it is in the mind, it is in the heart, it is in the action, it is in the gift of the giving that we create that. When we create that for others, we create it for ourselves. You may see war, right? You may be seeing the effects of isolation, the effects of the interesting last number of years we have on community, on yourself, on our children. You may see toxic patterns. You may see family systems. You may see corruption. You may see integrity issues, deceit. You may see a rise in narcissism. Has anyone else gotten that flag, seen that around? What is going on with that? You may see harm. So when we see those things, what do? It's not that in our practice in unity that we just deny and we just go, that's not happening, so let me just ride my ice cream truck into the sunset and act like it's not real for some people, real for us as an expression of the experiencers of the essence of light. That's what we are, right? The essence of light expressing. But we don't just deny it. That's not what a denial is. A denial is a truth statement. So even beyond this, there is a deeper reality. A denial is not saying John Fry does not have a hat on. Now I don't have anywhere to go with that analogy. But you can get at least that first part. John Fry does not have a hat on. That's not a denial. A denial is denying something has power over us, over you, in your life, that anything has power. Any lens you put on, any situation, any circumstance, and we know that is truth, right? Because we have all seen people in every sort of circumstance, family system, injury, anything, you fill in the blank, we have seen anything and everything, and we have seen people show up even in the midst of that with healing, wholeness, love, authenticity, fullness of God, right? We have seen natural disasters, we have seen war, and we have seen people even show up, even in the midst of that, with an incredible spirit of community, unity, love, peace, grace, right? We've seen people overcome amazing things and not go around harming other people because they've experienced harm. We've seen the power of overcoming and the power of the human spirit. So it's incumbent upon each of us to take on a practice of what do we do when we see these things? How do we, not in an airy-fairy world, but how do we, as grounded, mindful, spiritual individuals that know the truth that we are one, how do we operate in the midst of the discord from our oneness, recognizing that if one part shifts, the whole body shifts, right? So what do we do when we see these things? Well, we sow something. We sow seeds of love. We sow seeds of forgiveness. And what do we do with ourselves in times like these? We engage in a practice of grounding, a practice of stabilizing, a practice of support for ourselves and for our world. So how do we ground? What's practical? Unity is about positive, practical practice to make our lives better, not just a Sunday morning thing, right? So how do we put that into play? How do we ground? How do we stabilize? How do we get centered? How do we expand our practice for what the world needs now, for what the community needs now, for what we need now? How do we do that? I have people close to me that I was privileged to have a sweet conversation with a young one, and this young one going through their experience with their grandparents and time at the grandparents, right? They get like a night, a day, a night at the grandparents. And I could tell this little one would rather have stayed with us and didn't kind of want to go for the night. And so as adults, we were encouraging it, talking about what's, what we could do. So what's the thing going on? Well, it's boring, or it doesn't fit me in this way or that way. And this little one was old enough to know that they can start activating their internal power. So it was like having a conversation. Well, what can you bring to your grandparents then? What can you bring? What can you invite them into that is not boring? And we came up with some ideas. There still wasn't like full buy-in on the let's go there. But I just inquired and said, well, what happens when you're there? We watch TV. You know, and sometimes we do this and that. There are a few nice things, right? A few nice things that we do, and then I watch TV. How are we investing our time? It is essential now, isn't it? How are we investing our time together? And I said, like, well, so what else? Because we're just kind of trying to come up with ideas of how do we make this more fruitful. Like, you now have a calling to bring something to the grandparents that's nurturing you and to teach them, to bring them in on something. And this little one said, well, Grandma just reads the Bible, like reads it for a long time, just like I need to sit here and read the Bible for like 5 hours. What a holy notion. And you know what I said? So bad. I said this. I said, well, next time when you're with Grandma and she's going to read the Bible for 5 hours, you can go up to her and just say, where 2 or more are gathered, there am I in the midst of you. So let us gather and be God together, express God, share God. Let's activate what's in that book by communing together. Amen? Is that less powerful than sitting with the Bible for 5 hours? Who's spent time with a child? Studying, reading, thinking about these high principles, that's good and all, but unless we can take it to Unity's 5th principle, action, to make you feel my love. Who had grandparents that in the midst of being with your grandparents, you knew God was real? Who has someone in their lives that brings either creativity, that brings something, that brings whatever essence, whatever type of love, that it lets you know beyond a shadow of a doubt there is an absolute intelligence of which we are all a part, of which we all are in, living, moving, and have our being, unique, unrepeatable expressions of God we are, that this leads to that going like, oh my God, God is so real. Love is so real. You put your definition. Do not let the word G-O-D stand in the way of this conversation. What is that highest to you, and what lets you know, oh my gosh? For me, it's sometimes those synchronicities. It's like something was in my mind, and then this happened, and there am I in the midst of something, and I go, you can't make this stuff up. Maybe you were contemplating this exact topic, conversation, but didn't have the words for it within the last week. Evidence. So can we become that action, that activity? Because that's where humanity often falls short. It's not in our reading. It's not in our philosophy. It's not in our ideals. It's in being it, becoming it, activating it. This is what the master teacher always taught, like, get up and walk. Let's do this. Enough behind the closed doors, enough of just in the church I can say these things. But if I can't make these things come alive out in the world, what do I have? It's right in front of you. It's right in front of you. You're swimming in it. So we each have a huge role. And I want to talk today just about something because I recognize that we all have different perspectives, and I have the gift about ministry and having my perspective because there is such a level of intimacy shared and such a level of authenticity and safety that I get kind of a bird's eye view on where different people are. So I hope you find yourselves in one of these spaces. So you may find yourself at this point in time affected by destabilization, personally. That like stuff is up and you don't have any more tools. You're watching your mind, and it's a scary place. You're going through your experience, and you're like, I don't know how to get grounded. I don't know how to get myself back. Maybe you watch yourself, and you're engaging in patterns of addiction or this or that. Maybe you have something crumbling, like a relationship or a job life or whatever it is. Or maybe it's just your capacity for your beautiful, beautiful, beautiful reptilian brain to actually deal with everything that's going on is shot. You know, like from hearing about all the stuff that we hear about that our ancestors never had to deal with hearing about because they didn't know, because they didn't have a phone. And they didn't have the internet. But you do. It's all being shot at you 100 miles an hour, 24/7. You roll over and you wake up and it's available. And so your sweet little reptilian addiction brain that's now kind of being a little bit preyed upon by the whatever we have collectively created is like, oxygen, I need oxygen. I even noticed with my daughter, right? I noticed like, you know, the phone was there. We're talking and having our time, but the phone was there. And it's like she sees the phone and she's like, can I have a Bluey? Can I have one? And I'm like, no. Just like a symbol, no. I'm not trying not to give excuses anymore, just no. And then I looked at her, and I looked at her moment of pain before I gave my little consequence threat. You whine that much, and we're not going to have anything. But right before I had a little window, I had a little moment, and I was like, oh, sweetheart, I feel for you. That, like, you have to see these devices all over. And it's like her little reptilian brain is like, give me that, give me that, give me that, give me that. And I said, hon, do you know... when I was growing up, it wasn't that hard. It wasn't as hard as it is now. You have to develop some serious self-discipline if you want to get through childhood now in a sane way. And I said, my phone was like, and I pointed to the little corner. You know how there's a little corner in every kitchen where you know where the phone went? I pointed to that little corner, and I was like, that's where my phone was in my house. And it stayed there all the time. And if you wanted to talk on it, you had to go stand in. I should go over to this corner. You have to go stand in that corner the whole time you're talking. And you know what wasn't on it? Bluey or anything else. It was just another person. And if we left the house, we don't have it. Nobody can reach us. And you know that iPad and that information, you know, where you know that there's Hulu and Netflix and all that, and there are little shows on there, that wasn't available either. You know what you had to do? You had to look up the time that it was going to be on. Bluey wasn't on demand. It wasn't just any time I can have it. It's like Saturday morning at 10:30 exactly. You have to be home so you could turn on the TV so you can have it. Like, can you get the gravity of that? I know this is like a silly little analogy, but our reptilian brains, can you get the gravity of that? And then with children, like, And on some level, we are all going through it. On some level, our vices are a finger tap away. So fill in the blank on what yours are. But it's our falling asleep. And it's everywhere now. And it's easy now. And if we have not caught up with exercising our own dominion over our own mind and our own choices on how we want to show up for ourselves, our community, our world, we're selling ourselves short. Because there is an incredible opportunity when we ground ourselves. That's why the spiritual practice is more important now than ever. So if you are one that is personally affected, consider simplifying your life for now until you feel stabilized, right? Simplifying the life. My dad, I hear his voice all the time now. My dad always said one thing at a time. And I always thought it was like a little bit of a handicap that he had. And the older I get, I'm like, oh my gosh, he is so wise. One thing at a time. One thing at a time. So simplify, stabilize, get support. Be authentic, be real. Social media isn't a place necessary. It's a place to be heard and have little, compassion hearts, yeah? But it's not a place to get real help. Get off of it all and go to a person, go to a specialist, come to a community, touch a real hand, and get yourself support and be vulnerable and authentic about what's going on, yeah? Who's here for people if they need you? For real. When I used to have awful times, I struggled with deep depression for a long time. And I remember my sister one time telling me when I was in college at Boulder, because I was just like constantly feeling like I was going to just fall apart and start crying. And she said, Erin, if you really need help and you really get upset, you can just fall asleep, just fall apart and start crying. Just sit somewhere and start crying. Someone will come by and sit with you. True. So if you find yourself struggling, get help. The other big key is try to get into the present moment. Every time you notice the mind is going to the past, going to the future, or going to the news, or going to anything else, hop back into the present moment and ground there. Engage the practice, one thing at a time, and support structure. Okay, now if you're someone that maybe you don't feel like you're affected by it, but those lucky ones of you who are involved with someone deeply affected by it, what's going on right now, right? If you are involved with someone, so you have the ability to see it. You see it in our world. You see the toxic patterns, maybe in a family system, maybe in someone's mental health, whatever it is. But if you are involved, how do we show up for that? How do we sow spiritual principles after we see what we have seen? If you're the one who is not experiencing this, but you're seeing it, you are needed. So move into where the support is needed. Kind of like hospice care. Move in there. But move in from a grounded, steady state. Enrich and expand your practice so that you first, oxygen mask, right? First. So you first have stabilized. You first are clear. You're clear about your boundaries. You're clear about your center. You've expanded your practice. And then here you are as a planted, rooted tree being support. And for those affected, it doesn't mean because you're affected you can't be support. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. For it is in giving that we receive. If you are involved or you think you might be, have deeper conversations. Sit with someone while they process. A lot of stuff is coming up for healing right now. And here's the third kind of role. If you feel like you're outside of this, and I'm not going to have us raise hands, but I'm kind of curious. Social media, you can post it. If you feel like you're outside of this, like maybe you're watching it happen, but you're totally fine, and it's like, okay, this is going on with the world, whatever. Or this is news to you. If this is a total news flash to you, that we are in an interesting state right now, if this is a news flash to you, your role is huge. Your role is not to just be unaware that this stuff is going on, but your role is to anchor. Your role is to be so grounded and rooted, you don't need to know the stories, you don't need to know what's going on, but what you need to know is that in this state right now, you have those other two roles. And you can honor them with full compassion, and we open our hearts. It's a huge role. If you are the one who is not experiencing and not intimately involved with someone going through suffering, through trauma, through PTSD, through mental health issues, through whatever it is, fill in the blank, right? Systematic issues, right? Helping stabilize our government. My neighbor just said the other day, he was like, oh, so many people say, I just wish we could have the election right now and be done with it. They said, yeah, we just, one people. That's one thing I love about the Midwest. It's one people. It's person to person, helping people, person to person, people over politics, always. Not always, but here, right? And that's what we bring. That's what we see. That's what we know. And I've seen it demonstrated over and over. So if you are outside of all of it, you are needed. You're needed to hold down the fort. You're needed for your practice. You're needed for your grounded meditations. Ground more, hold space more, and expand it beyond yourself to a meta practice. In Buddhism, there's the idea of a metta practice. And it's an ancestral and ancient anchoring, healing practice that's been used for thousands of years. Different people in different places approach it differently, but essentially it's one thing. And it's holding the space for a love practice, sending it to yourself and sending it out. And that is so needed, right? I mean, just think about this, the world things that we know that are going on, right? So can you hold a metta practice? There are 3 aspects of a metta practice. It's kind-hearted physical action, kind-hearted verbal action or your speech, and kind-hearted mental action, your thoughts. So let's take a moment to do a metta practice together. Just, I invite you to close your eyes. Focus on the breath. Focus on the heart. Begin to direct loving kindness towards yourself. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. Now extend this loving kindness practice to loved ones, to neutral individuals, to difficult people, to all beings. May you be at ease in your body, feeling the ground beneath your seat and feet. May I be attentive and grateful for my own joy and well-being. May I receive others with sympathy and understanding. May I be gentle and attentive toward my own discomfort and suffering. Breathe into that for a moment. This is our call. We are one body. We are of one mind. We are here to bring the stillness back into the visible from the invisible. One moment at a time with what is before us, with who is before us, and what is within us. I invite a deep inhale and a mighty exhale. Namaste.